After her big screen debut as Joan in Lovers and Other Strangers in 1970, Diane Keaton would begin a path that she would walk for the next 55 years, growing such a memorable filmography, whether on the small screen, on the big screen, independent projects, big budget productions, dramas, comedies, dramedies. It didn't matter. Diane Keaton was up for anything, and she always carried herself with an air of class, elegance, and realism. She is the type of woman that somebody could walk down the street, see her, and think, that's somebody I would like to sit down and have a conversation with. And Diane Keaton, revered as one of the best actresses of her generation. Arguably, even into this decade, she's just had that cachet about her. She had that ability to just make you realize how gifted she really was. And taking a look from 1970 to now, it is mind-blowing how many movies, revered critically and revered by audiences, revered by her peers. Diane Keaton is somebody that could be, just such an inspiration to so many. And it is such a shame that a little bit earlier today, on October 11, 2025, Diane Keaton left this planet. At the age of 79, what a career, what a life she led. And I'm here to talk about some of the roles that she had, because some of you may know this, a lot of you may not. Diane Keaton is one of my favorite actresses. Whether it's in a project that I don't think looks all that good, or whether it's in one of the most revered, critically, acclaimed movies of like the 70s, 80s, whatever. She is somebody that just really was classy. She was an absolutely classy lady. And just somebody, just in interviews, she just always seemed like she just seemed so down to earth. And she will be sorely missed. She will absolutely be sorely missed. I'm going to have to, at some point, do a Diane Keaton movie binge, possibly sometime next year. But there may be some Diane Keaton reviews that come up at some point. But this is a way to honor her memory as best I am able. But I want to know your favorite Diane Keaton roles, movies in the comments. What did you think of Diane Keaton? I would like to know. So, she was born on January 5th, 1946 in L.A. She was raised Free Methodist by her mother, Dorothy. And she got into acting and singing in school. And you could tell even in Lovers and Other Strangers, which I've seen a few clips of, I've never actually seen the whole thing, that is, she had that star quality about her. And that movie had Gig Young as well as B. Arthur. And she would have appearances on television, Night Gallery, Mannix, and some other television, during her movie, her stints in movies. And, she played Kay in The Godfather. It's in 1972. She's like 26. And getting a role in an Oscar, just like cleaner. I mean, that movie just cleaned up at like the goddamn. It was just so, as far, even just with nominations, The Godfather was just so revered. And Diane Keaton may have been part of an ensemble, but she was somebody that, you remember from that. And then Play It Again, Sam. Of course, Sam made the pants too long. Har har. She played Linda. That was in the same year as The Godfather. So her career's already cooking. Sleeper. She played Laura. That was in 1973. Played Kay again in Godfather 2. Love and Death. She played, that was in 1975. She played opposite of Woody Allen. Could say stuff about Woody Allen if I wanted to, but it's already been said, and this is a tribute to the memory of Diane Keaton. But Annie Hall is a role that defines her, a movie that defines her, and she was able to achieve much success after that. But that's something that basically cemented her as one of the best, at least of the 70s. And then you had Interns at 1978. She played Renetta. And then Manhattan, again, like, take a look at the cast. But Manhattan's a movie that's pretty well remembered. That's 1979. Reds. She played opposite of Warren Beatty there. That she, had roles there. Unfortunately, that would lead to some friction between her and Warren Beatty as far as being romantically involved. And then, Shoot the Moon. She was opposite Albert Finney and, Karen Allen, who had just had a turn in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Little Drummer Girl. Opposite of Klaus Kinski. And, Crimes of the Heart is another one that's well remembered from her. And I'm kind of going through her filmography and talking about some stuff that I remember. But realistically, what you can just appreciate watching Diane Keaton is how she commanded the screen. She didn't make it about her, though. She just had that quality where you had to watch her. And the same can be said about Robert Redford. And yes, unfortunately, I was not able to do a tribute to Robert Redford, but may he rest in peace as well. May post reviews of The Natural and stuff like that. And that Twilight Zone episode where he played Death, that was a really, really good one. But back to Miss Diane Keaton. That was actually 1986, The Crimes of the Heart was, and she even had a bit part as a radio singer in Radio Days. Then she played Kay once again in Godfather 3, so, she's 20 years into her career, and she's had appearances and television, that kind of stuff, and she's kept busy and always carried herself with such class. So she's in her mid-40s at this point. Father of the Bride Part 1, Steve Martin Short, that must have gotten confusing on set, but yeah, Diane Keaton in that, and just such a memorable role. And, Manhattan Murder Mystery, I do recall seeing that one a while ago. It has been quite a while. But look who's talking now. They weren't all winners, folks. But Father of the Bride Part 2, they reassembled the people from before and everything. And once again, carrying herself just as only she can. But really what gave her career a second life, not that her career was sputtering, was The First Wives Club. Bette Midler, Goldie Hawn, Diane Keaton, 1996. I do recall seeing that. That was during a glut of we're doing the woman empowerment thing, but Diane Keaton was perfect for that. And she, just great with the comedy and everything. There was some slapstick stuff in there, but it worked. It really did fucking work. And Diane Keaton was, at this point, 50, just still oozing class and everything. And, 26 years into her film career. And, Marvin's Room, that was the same, that was the same one that she was, the same year that, First Wives Club happened. The other sister, she starred opposite Juliette Lewis, and that's 1999, so she's coming up on 30 years as far as big screen appearances. Hanging Up, that had Meg Ryan and Lisa Kudrow. That wasn't one of the best, but everybody is allowed to have some misses. Speaking of misses, Town and Country. Town and Country is notorious for the amount of money that it cost for the stars, reshoots, all that stuff. And it's not Diane Keaton's fault. It's just the way the production went, and the movie was a fucking flop. It was just absolutely insane. But I was also in the 2000, 2001, and don't get me wrong, Diane Keaton, great part of an ensemble cast, but that movie was doomed to fail. Stuff like Plan B, crossover, On Thin Ice, but Something's Got to Give with Jack Nicholson. Now, that was another one, kind of like the First Wives Club. She'd done this stuff. First Wives Club kind of put up, kind of smoothed out a little bit. Something's Got to Give was really good, and she's 43 years into her career here. The Family Stone, I forgot about that one. That one is okay. That's not great. It's not a great use of Diane Keaton. But at this point, we're 46 years into her career. And, she's 60. Still carrying that air about her and everything. And still looking tremendous as far as a star and everything. Just having that just star quality about her and that just realistic air. Because I said so, that was in 2007, she started opposite of Mandy Moore, of all people. It's when Mandy Moore was trying to be taken as a serious actress. And Mad Money, and The Big Wedding, So It Goes. She was also the voice of Jenny in Finding Dory. She was doing more voice work and stuff like that. She would even do something on Netflix. And so, she's 56 years into her career, still going strong. She's not overloading herself on work. but she's just having, yeah, I'm kind of running down her career moments and stuff like that. And she's been getting awards, Academy Awards, other considerations, that kind of stuff. Just the amount of awards and award consideration that she got speaks highly to how respected by critics and her peers Diane Keaton was. And then she played Sister Mary in the Young Pope TV series, and then The Book Club 2018. And I remember actually watching that. I had seen it before, but then I watched it just before the sequel. More on that here in a second. And, again, she just was, approaching, 50 years in Hollywood and still carrying herself well. And with, just with Jane Fonda and just a few others, and just the star power there, Diane Keaton still having that classy air about her. And yes, I know I'm saying classy air and stuff like that about it. It's sad, guys. I'm sorry, it's sad. This woman was a big deal to a lot of people. It might surprise you that I actually appreciate a lot of her roles and everything. And I've only seen some of these movies, but I've seen clips of enough of, the ones I haven't seen to recognize just how great she is. She was in Palms that had not exactly great, but it was what it was. And, Green Eggs and Ham, the Netflix television series, maybe I do recall that movie, at least relying on the star power of her and, the others, but realistically, Diane Keaton was helping out with that. But man, I really wish that the screenplay had been a little bit better. And in Book Club, the next chapter, I actually ended up seeing a special screening of that. About 5 days before it came out, full house. And it was great to hear people, reacting and stuff like that. So 53 years into her career, she's just, still cooking along and everything. Yes, Book Club, the next chapter wasn't great. Okay, it wasn't great, but it was entertaining. And really, that's all you could ask for at this point. So, she's, approaching, she's in her mid-70s at this point. And then the last movie that I remember seeing her in, actually, according to IMDb, the last movie, and maybe she filmed other stuff that will be released after her, now that her untimely passing has hit us. Summer Camp with Kathy Bates and whatever. And how sad is that such a great career that had some highs and lows ended with a film like Summer Camp? I mean, just really? Just Summer Camp? And Summer Camp, just to me, was kind of I defined it as elder abuse, because it wasn't very good. And it just felt like such a slap in the face to people that had her talents, and Kathy Bates was also in. Alfie Woodard was in it, and just Diane Keaton, though, still classy. And she even directed Unsung Heroes in 1995. Romances with Woody Allen, and then she got too old for Woody Allen. Hey-oh. Warren Beatty. She adopted 2 kids in, I think sometime in 99 or 2000, something like that. And she never had kids of her own, but she wanted to, and being an adopted mother, having kids, raising them as your own, that can be tough, but she did it naturally as only she could. And she was a photography enthusiast. And really, if we look at, those roles, of her career and everything, and looking back on this stuff, you never forget your first, her as Joan, and Lover's Another Stranger, but I need to go back and rewatch I need to go back and watch in full at some point. I need to go back and rewatch the Godfather movies at some point, but you see Diane Keaton even into the early 80s, and she's almost unrecognizable because a lot of people remember her as from the First Wives Club on. You remember her, not necessarily in her twilight years, but as an older woman. Yes, at one point she was like, "Holy shit, that's Diane Keaton." It's it takes a bit to shell shocks you. Annie Hall would be probably the one that would be most identified with her career. Manhattan is another one that was pretty damn good. Manhattan Murder Mystery, Father of the Bride, Crimes of the Heart is another one. And then you get the First Wives Club. And I'd say First Wives Club is probably what, brought her name back more to the forefront. Not that her star power had faded, but that's a role that's definitely, memorable. And something's got to give. I mean, her opposite of Jack Nicholson, that was actually, pretty good. That was a pretty funny movie. And then, yes, the book club and stuff like that. But she always carried herself with class. She always carried herself as such a realistic, down-to-earth woman. And Diane Keaton will be sorely missed. So I know this is more of just running down her career highlights and stuff like that. And I'm not going to do an entire biography on her. I'd be here all day and I wouldn't be able to do her justice. But there are some great movies in there that I listed that I encourage you guys to check out if you have not. If you're not that familiar with Diane Keaton's work, if you want to be more familiar with her work, I need to dive into more stuff. I need to dive into more Robert Redford stuff. It is really sad that actors around that age of like that golden era of the 60s, or Diane Keaton's case, the 70s, the 80s, even the 90s, are leaving us, but with a hell of a filmography. And to think 79, I thought she was older, to be perfectly honest. And she packed a lot of roles, a lot of stuff. It is a lot of films and a lot of television appearances in those 55 years that she basically was active. And I hope that there are a couple films that were completed, with her in it before, her passing. It would be a nice way to just, have a tail end of her career and her life. But realistically, just in retrospect, like anybody from the Diane Keaton estate is going to see this, but thank you, Diane Keaton. Thank you for the memories. A great, classy woman that will be remembered as having grace, a down-to-earth nature, and a magnetism that came across the screen, regardless of what film she was in, regardless of what production she was in. And rest in peace, Diane Keaton. You will never be forgotten.